Then we'll go back to that.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to take us to the other side of the country. This is an area that Senator Cash will be fairly familiar with as well. Similar line of inquiry, though. It's interesting that we have three urban freeway projects under discussion. So specifically the Perth Freight Link. If you could, firstly, the budget papers identify $866 million of agreed Commonwealth funding for the Perth Freight Link, but media reports are talking up a $925 million figure. Now, I'm not asking you to account for what journalists might come up with, but can you help distinguish where that comes from?
The $866 million was new money as part of the infrastructure growth package, but there was already funding in the program for the High Street component, which has been subsumed into the Perth Freight Link. So that's the reason for the difference.
All right, that's really useful. I probably should have known that, but thanks. Is the Commonwealth in a position to withdraw its contribution based on any set criteria, or is this committed no matter what?
Senator, we have a national partnership agreement which has been signed by all jurisdictions, and under that national partnership agreement there's a separate schedule for the Western Australian program, and so we've agreed to provide the funding for those projects, and the state has provided to agreed to deliver those projects that are in the schedule, including obviously the Perth Freight Link. There are provisions in the agreement if the project wasn't to proceed, if one of the parties wanted to cancel the project, but that National Partnership Agreement does provide the basis for us proceeding with the project.
All right, I understand why you'd want that continuity, but so if we have a similar example to what just happened in Victoria, where there was a state election, change of government, very dramatic change of priorities, the Commonwealth isn't going to plough on insisting that its funding was only for the Perth Freight Link?
That would be a matter for the Commonwealth Government at the time.
I guess, but there's nothing in the National Partnership Agreement that insists that would need to occur.
The National Partnership Agreement is between two levels of government. It is open to governments, obviously, to change their priorities.
Yeah. All right.
In the case of Victoria, the federal government's position remains that the East West project should continue. That's not the view of the new Victorian government.
Yeah, I'd respectfully disagree with that as well, but let's keep us in WA. Is Commonwealth funding of the Perth Freight Link conditional on any particular criteria or milestones being met, or is that money going to be handed over no matter what?
Senator, we have received a business case from the West Australians, and a summary of that business case has been released. Infrastructure Australia are also considering the business case and provide advice to government. We'll also be considering a project proposal report from the West Australians when a final funding decision will be made by the Minister.
So the business case has not been put into the public domain yet, although the summary was released, I think,
that's right, in December, the summary was
late
released.
December.
Yes.
Is the business case taking the entire catchment? Because sometimes I think we confuse with three different projects. There's the 85 kilometres, which is all the way from New Shea down to the Port of Fremantle. There's the 6.5 kilometre section that's attracted a lot of interest through the Beelair Wetlands. And then there's the western connection that would take it from the Roe extension all the way through to the container port. Does the business case for that entire link all the way down from New Shea, or is it a subset?
Well, the business case considers the entire linkage, but the focus of it is on the component we're calling the Perth Freight Link, which is from the Kwinana Freeway through the Row 8 extension, Stock Road, High Street through to the Port of Fremantle.
Okay, fine. And the Commonwealth, that is useful to know. And the funding commitment that's been made isn't for any specific piece of that project, it's for the entire extent from the Roe Highway extension all the way through the port.
That's correct, Senator.
All right, thank you. Is the Commonwealth Government, I guess it's Infrastructure Australia's job then to go through and interrogate that business case and work out whether it's happy. If the Commonwealth, if you guys are not happy with the assumptions or the models that are used, which are very similar to those that have been used for New South Wales and Victoria, do you have the ability to go back to the state and ask for its homework to be done to a higher standard?
Well, we've certainly been working with the West Australians for some time. We've employed people, consultants who've done work along the way to provide assurance to us as the business case has been developed.
Who have you got working on this project in particular?
I don't think we have consultants working at the moment, but we have had during the during the past year. I can provide details.
Do you want to just table those for us down the track?
Yeah, we can just table it later today, Senator,
Thanks.
if you like.
Is it your understanding that the traffic modelling that's been provided by the proponent, in this case the state government, the usual justification for this project is to reduce freight traffic, and particularly container traffic on Leach Highway? Are you aware that the proponent's own modelling shows that this Perth freight link will have a negligible impact on container traffic on Leach Highway? Does that disturb you at all?
Senator, I think the business case summary that was released does outline quite a number of the benefits of the project, and including reduced heavy vehicle usage of Leach Highway.
It's not at all what I've got in front of me.
The overview says that that it will bypass 14 traffic lights, resulting in less delays and frustration of heavy vehicles. The benefits also include 500 fewer trucks per day on sections of the Leach Highway by 2031.
500 a day?
Yes, by 2031, reducing noise and increasing mobility, and also improving access to the Murdoch Activity Centre and the Fiona Stanley Hospital.
So the PER, which is what I'm drawing my information from, and I can table that after the session if you like, so that you've got access to what I'm looking at, indicated that daily heavy vehicle flows 2021 without the project would be about 2,800, and that it would be about 2,600 with the project. Is that reasonably consistent with the modelling that you're reading from? Doesn't sound like
Senator,
that.
that's probably that's 1 year, I presume. So
it's a 2021 snapshot of an estimate, and that was contained in the PER.
Yeah.
So I think, sorry, so you're saying, you're quoting that it's 2,800 in 2021 without, 2,600 with.
Roughly, I'm reading off a graph.
And I think what Mr Jaggers indicated, that a 2031 projection is that 200 less is then 500 less by 2031.
So it opens up.
So it seems to me that that's probably talking about a consistent document.
It's in the ballpark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Senator, we might have to take that on notice to provide you some
It
more
sounds
detail.
like, I would have presumed the business case and the PER
If it's a
are
decade
consistent.
later and there's kind of a wedge opening up
Yeah.
as traffic moves off.
So essentially what you'd imagine with projects like this is your growth will be absorbed by the new route.
And are those assumptions under any kind of examination or test by the Commonwealth, either for 2020s or the 2030s?
We certainly look at, future freight projections and do some modelling on future growth in freight, and this is reflecting obviously a future growth in freight. So we would check to see that it's consistent with our projected modelling of future freight forecasts.
That's good to know. And what can you tell us in this instance? Do you think the state government's increase of freight volume projections are accurate, reliable?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and Senator, in relation to this project, we also did our own modelling of traffic volumes, and that information was shared with West Australia and used as a comparison point for them in determining their patronage forecast for the project. So we're comfortable with the forecasts that have been included in their business case.
Now, for a long period of time, there have been proposals that have just never quite gotten off the drawing board for a container port in Cockburn Sound, which would either act as a spillover or to shift some of the container traffic at least, and maybe some of the other freight tasks out of the Port of Fremantle. If that were to come to pass, what impact would that have on this project, which is entirely dedicated to shunting freight in and out of Fremantle Harbour?
Senator, I guess there's 2 points I'd like to make in response to that. First is that the Perth Freight Link, a large proportion of it, the Road 8 extension, obviously would assist freight volumes moving to the south as well as to the north towards Fremantle. So there's certainly no redundancy in a large portion of the project. I guess the second point I'd make is that there's currently 670,000 containers moving out of Fremantle, based on 2012-13 data, with the port continuing to grow to about 1.2 million FTE per year. So there's still
So did you say 600,000 at the start?
670,000.
So doubling freight container movements.
I'm saying that there's current capacity within the port to move to 1.2 million containers per year.
Yeah, go.
So there's certainly significant room for container growth in Fremantle, and so that the project that we're talking about, the Perth Freight Link, is obviously will be supporting that container growth into the future. And if a port is opened at Kwinana sometime down the track, then obviously a large part of the existing project would also support an outer harbour solution.
Through you, yes. Thanks, Chair. Mr Jaggers, the 670,000 container movements you just mentioned from 2012, 2013, what about single trailer movements that aren't containers? And there's I was going to say shitload
A fair number.
There's heaps of them
Yeah.
in all those new vehicles. Have you got those figures as well? Because there will be thousands on top of the container movements as well that you haven't counted in that.
Well, they're not included in that number of containers, but I was commenting
No, I
just
already
on
worked that out.
That was what
the
I
growth
asked
of the
about.
port and where that's sustainable. But certainly the patronage numbers that have been developed by West Australia and that we've
Yeah, so
reviewed
I
and done
won't-
our own,
sorry, there's
take that into account. Of course,
Your miles out.
Yeah.
With gross spread, I'm having a crack
But-
at
No, I was only asking about container traffic.
Yeah, it is though important. One of the benefits of the project by having a heavy vehicle charge on the project is that it disencourages empty
cattle movements as well.
Yeah.
Sheep.
Yeah, disencourages trucks to leave
Nearly
the
a
port
million.
without.
You're nearly a million. Who gave you those figures? Sorry, is that from WA?
All right, can you
Is
just
that
tell
WA's
us?
figures?
I'm kind of getting to wind
I'm
up
not-
because we're getting close.
not sure.
We're getting close to the lunch break. There's a certain amount known, although I still think it's frighteningly ambiguous, about the section that ploughs through the wetlands at Beelair, but there's much less known about what the footprint of this project is going to look like west of the Beelair Wetlands as it runs up into Fremantle. So what can you tell us about grade separation, overpasses, tunnels? How are you actually going to get connectivity between the Roe Highway extension and the container port, or the port in general?
Do you want to do it without it? Certainly, Senator, the community consultation and environmental approvals processes are still underway. So,
How could you have funded the project to the tune of nearly $1 billion while that's still afoot?
well, there had to be a commitment to the project to move the project forward to this point.
What is the point of consulting with people after you've made the decision?
There are a range of...
That's insulting, not consulting.
I think there are a range of options that the West Australian Government is still considering for those intersections, and so they're consulting and talking to businesses but also to communities about those options. So I think it is still quite an important part of the process, and the alignments and the final design is still yet to be settled for each of those components. But I think Mr Pitter can provide some more information.
Again, Senator, the business case summary that was released in December outlines some of the works to the west of the Beelair Wetlands and around Stock Road. It talks about that work involving between Stock Road and South Street. That would be upgraded to a 6-lane highway. Construction of overpass at the Winterfold Road and grade separated interchange at South Street. Local road access between South Street and the Leach Highway will be rationalised, and construction of a new 4-lane connection between Stock Road and Leach Highway. So that outlines some of the things that are at a broad level.
Thank you for that. When you say rationalised, do you mean cut off?
Up on the web too.
That from the Was the government the Commonwealth Government in possession of the full business case when the decision was made to allocate $860 million?
The government's announcement was conditional on the preparation of the business case.
The government funded $860 million in a very tight budgetary environment without being in possession of the business case.
The completion of the business case was undertaken post the announcement to commit. Coming back to your earlier point in relation to assessment processes...
I'd like to stay on this point for a second. There is, isn't there?
The reality is for every project, unless there is a funding commitment, we don't proceed to detailed planning or environmental assessment. That's the reality, because we don't have the funds to proceed, and all projects have an initial funding commitment and then proceed through the planning and assessment process.
You know, that is totally the opposite direction in which public transport projects are funded.
Could
You
I
wouldn't,
just
in your wildest dreams.
order, could I just regret to have to inform you that your time has expired, and Senator Back,